My name is Christina Anderson, and I'm 25 years old. To the outside world, I might look like just another office worker. But that's merely a facade. Every morning at 5 a.m., before the dawn breaks, I wake up. Before taking care of my grandmother and my beloved dog Alex, I open my laptop to check the global stock markets. This has been my daily routine since I was 15. My mother taught me how to read the market, saying, "Behind every number, there's always a person." My earliest memory is from my 5th birthday. Late at night, after everyone had gone to sleep, my mother secretly took me to her study. "Christina, read this," she whispered, handing me a business newspaper. Puzzled, I stared at the pages filled with large numbers. 7, 89, 1. "Amazing," she exclaimed softly. My mother had a knack for numbers. She had excelled in economics during her college years, but she gave up her dreams upon getting married. My father wouldn't allow it. A woman should not be dealing with numbers. A housewife should focus on household chores and child rearing. So, my mother played the obedient wife by day. But at night, she showed a different face, secretly reading the financial newspaper and studying stock charts. I was the only one who knew this side of her. There's always a life behind the numbers. I was captivated by my mother's secret hobby. While other girls played with dolls, I quietly studied stock lists with her. "This company seems promising," she would say, sliding her finger across the page. "Their new product is likely to change people's lives." Meanwhile, life at home was suffocating. My father's words were always commanding. "Christina, you're the younger sister, so show more respect to Joseph." My brother Joseph was 4 years older. Simply because he was a boy, my father always prioritized him. Joseph's demands escalated over the years. "Do my homework for me." "My room is messy. Did you clean it properly?" "My friends are coming over, so stay out of the room." My mother tried to protect me. "Don't treat Christina like that." But my father and Joseph remained unchanged. "Don't spoil her," my father would yell. "A girl must be obedient." When I was 10, my mother taught me my first investment. "This is your allowance, $100, she said, handing me an envelope. "Let's buy some stock in a company you like." I thought hard about it. At that time, game consoles were popular among my friends. Together with my mother, I read the financial statements of that company. "Look here," she pointed. "See how the sales of the new product are increasing." A year later, that investment had doubled. By the time I was in middle school, my mornings began with checking stock prices on the computer. On weekends, my mother and I would read economic books in the library or study stock graphs on the computer. "See how this line is going up? That represents the hopes of many people." My father, overhearing our conversations, would sigh. "Here we go again. Girls don't need to bother with numbers. Go prepare dinner instead." Outwardly, my mother obeyed my father, but she was always on my side. "You have talent. You can make your own choices in life. Don't let anyone dim your light." However, an unexpected event struck us one summer when I was 14. My mother was diagnosed with cancer. It was an aggressive form of gastric cancer, and it progressed rapidly. 6 months later, she passed away abruptly. The sudden parting left me without my most important confidant. On the day of the funeral, my father and Joseph cried. But their tears didn't last long. "Christina, from now on, you'll take care of all the household chores. Do your mother's part as well." It was as though he spoke of losing just another household helper. After the funeral, while I was sorting through my mother's keepsakes, I found a letter. "To my beloved Christina. If you are reading this, I must be gone. But I have something left for you. I have deposited $10,000 in a bank safe. This is the money I saved up little by little over 10 years, from my part-time job earnings and cutting down on our grocery expenses. You have a talent for numbers, a knack for reading the markets. You can achieve the dreams I couldn't. Use this $10,000 as your starting capital to follow your own path, but keep it a secret from your father and brother until the right time. With all my love, Mom." I was determined. I decided to invest the $10,000 my mother had left me. Following the investment principles I learned from her, I chose the stocks carefully. It was a period of rapid growth for technology companies. The stocks I chose started performing better than expected. I devoured investment books at the library after school. I studied my mother's old economic textbooks over and over. I would stop by my maternal grandmother's house to use her computer. All transactions were done secretly using my grandmother's computer, so that neither my father nor my brother would notice. "You're late again. Get dinner ready," my father would say irritably. "Sorry, I was studying at the library. I'll prepare it right away." I had to lie. 6 months after my mother's death, my maternal grandmother came to live with us. She was worried about our nearly collapsing home after losing my mother and offered to move in. My father and brother, seeing it only as an increase in someone to handle the chores, did not oppose my grandmother's living with us. She brought along her golden retriever, Alex. For me, suppressed by my father and brother, the time spent with my grandmother became a precious healing period. I especially loved the time we spent walking Alex. It was a time where I could talk with my grandmother alone, undisturbed. "Christina, you are free to follow the path you love," my grandmother would always say. Your mother would have wanted the same. Thanks to my grandmother, I was somewhat relieved from household chores. I used that time to read the investment books left by my mother and analyze market trends. It was my way of conversing with my mother. However, this peace did not last long. A year after my grandmother moved in, on a winter day, a sudden phone call shocked me. "Your grandmother had a traffic accident." When I rushed to the hospital, she was already in surgery. After 7 hours, the doctor gave a grim prognosis. Her lower body motor functions. Full recovery will be difficult. From that day on, my life changed drastically. "Christina, you're in charge of looking after Grandma," my father said without mercy. "I'm busy with my studies." My brother stated indifferently. Household chores, caring for my grandmother, looking after Alex. Everything fell on my shoulders. I woke up at 4 a.m. to help my grandmother change and prepare breakfast, take Alex for his morning walk, and make breakfast for my father and brother. After returning from school, I immediately took care of my grandmother and did household chores until midnight. In between, I continued to study investments. "Christina." My grandmother would often cry at night. "I'm sorry for putting you through all this," she would say, looking apologetic while seated in her wheelchair. But I shook my head. "Because you are here, I can keep going." That was no lie. Indeed, I was physically tired, but my grandmother was my ally. She was the only one who understood me after my mother passed away. Late at night, after I finished caring for my grandmother, I would secretly look at the stock charts. I felt my mother's intuition growing within me. "Christina, are you staying up late again?" My grandmother would ask worriedly. "It's okay. Just a little longer." Despite being the one cared for, my grandmother was always worried about me. Sometimes she would tell me stories of my mother's youth, about how my mother secretly studied economics and how she learned stock investing behind my father's back. Your mother also had the same light within her. My grandmother's words were my support against the unreasonable demands of my father and brother and the ever-increasing burden of household chores. Still, I never gave up on my dreams. A year later, my initial investments had already tripled. At 17, a major turning point came. The assets I was managing caught the eye of an investment advisory firm. "I'm interested in your investment strategy," said an email from Richard Harrison, the CEO of a long-established investment advisory firm. At first, I hesitated. What could I, still a high school student, possibly contribute? But this might be a chance to continue my mother's path. It was my first interview. In the reception room of a high-rise building, I sat across from Richard, nervous. "I've seen your investment record," he said in a calm voice. "You have remarkable intuition and analytical skills. It's a natural talent." From that day on, my life changed significantly. After school, I interned at the investment firm. At night, I managed household duties and cared for my grandmother while doing corporate analysis online. My father and Joseph didn't notice the change. Perhaps they simply chose not to notice. In their eyes, I was just a useful child, a convenient presence who managed household and caregiving tasks. "Christina, what's for dinner tonight? Is the laundry done? Are you managing Grandma's medication properly?" Those were their only words to me. Joseph, who had spent his college life idly and barely graduated, got a job at a small to medium-sized company through my father's connections. Although his job was in sales, rumors were he hardly worked and was out partying every night, but my father seemed unconcerned. "Christina, you're hardly ever home these days." Joseph, unusually home early one night, slurred his words with the smell of alcohol. "I've done all the housework, right? I'm busy with my studies." I replied quietly. "It's not just that. Who's going to take care of Grandma and Alex when you're not home?" "I take care of them every morning and night. During the day, I've asked a helper to do that." "A helper? Who's paying for that?" "It's okay. I've managed to get a helper at a reduced rate from an acquaintance." My father had completely handed over financial management to me. He didn't even check the bills, oblivious to the costs of caregiving services. Even if I left the monthly payment statements on his desk, he never looked at them. In fact, I had already earned enough from my investments. I secretly covered the expenses for my grandmother's premium care services, Alex's grooming, and even the utility bills that my father and brother were supposed to pay. Unbeknownst to them, I was the one supporting our household finances. But I never spoke of it to my family, believing they wouldn't understand even if I did. Moreover, if it became known, it would also reveal the investment talent I inherited from my mother. My father and brother only saw me as a mere household helper. They could never understand my true self. By the time I was graduating high school, my managed assets had exceeded $1 million. I decided not to pursue college and instead accepted a job offer at Richard's company. It was spring, just before my high school graduation, when my father unexpectedly showed interest in my future. "Christina, what are you going to do after you graduate?" he asked during dinner one day. He probably asked because he saw the graduation ceremony invitation. "It's already been decided." In reality, I already had a job lined up at the investment advisory firm after graduation, a decision made by Richard to rejuvenate the company. "Oh, where?" "At Nova Quantum Capital." My father tilted his head. "What's that? Never heard of it." "It's an investment advisory firm. I'll be working under the CEO, Richard Harrison." "Ah, some small company then." My father lost interest and resumed eating. Joseph snickered. "New employees have it tough. You didn't even go to college. You can still handle the housework as usual, right?" His condescending attitude made me quietly sigh. Nova Quantum Capital was one of the fastest-growing investment firms, yet they didn't even know the name. "Of course I'll take proper care of Grandma. And don't forget Alex's walks. And doing the laundry," Joseph commanded. "I know." My father indifferently opened the newspaper, and Joseph started fiddling with his smartphone. They had no interest in my life, my job, or what the company did. Their only concern was whether I would continue to perfectly manage the household, caregiving, and pet care as I always had. That night, as I read investment books in my grandmother's room, she whispered softly, "I read about your company in the newspaper. It's an impressive company, isn't it?" Tears welled up in my eyes. Among my family, only my grandmother truly saw who I was. By that time, I had secretly started preparing to establish my own company, a new investment platform centered around AI. I wanted to create a system where everyone could have fair access to investment opportunities, realizing my mother's dream with modern technology. I felt that this was my mission. Christina, you have talent. I hope you continue to energize this industry. Richard had always told me after I joined the firm. He supported my dream of starting my own company. And at his company, I built my track record and capabilities. I developed an AI-powered investment analysis system and created new financial products using blockchain technology. I launched project after project, each becoming a success. Industry papers called me the youngest investment prodigy. On my 20th birthday, I established my own company. The name was Horizon Investment Technologies, chosen to reflect looking towards the future beyond the horizon. Richard gladly acknowledged my independence. You'll surely carve out a new era. The funding for the company came from the profits of my past investments. My departure from Nova Quantum Capital to start my own venture became somewhat of a news item in the industry. During the press conference for my company's launch, a reporter asked, "Aren't you too young?" I smiled and replied, "Age is just a number. What matters is how much you can contribute to society, and I plan to demonstrate that through numbers." This was covered on some economic TV shows. However, my family remained oblivious. My father and brother, uninterested in economic news, still believed I worked as an ordinary employee in a small company. "Christina, what's for dinner tonight?" That was the usual daily routine. Only my grandmother quietly watched over me. "You're just like your mother. You have the same light." A year after the establishment of my company, my AI investment system was revolutionizing the market. It has lowered the barriers for individual investors. AI curbs emotional investment decisions by humans, establishing new standards for socially responsible investments. Praised the economic magazines as my company rapidly grew. We surpassed 100 employees, and our managed assets broke through $1 billion. One morning, Joseph burst into the house, excited. "Everyone, I have a big announcement." He addressed all of us gathered in the living room. "Listen, I'm engaged to Tiffany." Tiffany was the woman he had been dating for about 6 months. Their meeting at a mixer half a year ago had greatly impressed Joseph, especially since she worked for a major pharmaceutical company and her father was a doctor. Joseph must have felt a need to impress Tiffany. "Actually, I'm an executive at a big company." He had lied initially. As his relationship with Tiffany progressed, his lies grew. "Our company's sales this quarter are the highest ever. Next month, I'm going to Singapore to set up a new branch. I have over 100 subordinates, so I barely have time to rest." In reality, he was just a salesperson at a small company, and near the bottom in performance, hardly serious about his work. But in front of Tiffany, he acted like a different person, taking her to high-end restaurants and gifting her brand-name products, all financed through consumer loans. "Joseph is really amazing," Tiffany had said, and though it pained him, Joseph had continued to pile on the lies. "Actually, I've just been promoted to vice president. I'm thinking of buying an apartment. My family has been in business for generations." I had glimpsed my brother's lies. As an executive at Nova Quantum Capital, I was privy to information about pharmaceutical companies, including Tiffany's company's performance and personnel changes, and I knew her father was a well-known figure in the medical industry. However, I chose not to expose my brother's lies. Eventually, everything would come to light, likely sooner than I expected at that time. "Congratulations." I responded nonchalantly. "We've decided to have the wedding in Hawaii." Joseph continued with a look of pride. My father raised his voice in joy and hugged Joseph. "Wonderful. That's my son." "Christina." Joseph looked at me, his usual arrogance apparent in his gaze. "You have an important job." I silently stared back at him. "Taking care of Grandma and Alex. Someone needs to stay home, right?" My father nodded in agreement. "That's right." "Christina?" You are the most suited for this." I looked at my grandmother. Sadness was evident in her eyes. That night I was working in the office. The city's nightscape was visible through the large glass window. My secretary Mandy came in with some documents. "Ms. Anderson, here's the report on the Asian markets." "Thank you." "And Mandy, I have a personal favor to ask." "Yes. Could you book 2 first-class tickets to Hawaii? For my grandmother and me." Mandy smiled. "Of course. And..." She hesitated. "About the matter we discussed earlier. Are you sure you want to cancel all the reservations for Joseph's wedding?" I sighed. "Please do. But don't say it was by my order." 2 months later, I took a deep breath in the limousine heading to the hotel lobby, with my grandmother sitting beside me. My reflection in a pure white summer dress flickered in the window. "Christina, are you nervous?" My grandmother asked kindly. "Yes, a little." I answered honestly. "But I have no regrets now. The plan was perfect." Under my instructions, all reservations for Joseph's wedding had been cancelled. The fact that he had been lying extravagantly should already be known to Tiffany's parents. The limousine smoothly pulled up to the entrance of a luxury hotel. The driver opened the door, and I carefully helped my grandmother out of her wheelchair. That's when I saw it. Joseph was frantically making phone calls in the lobby. My father was sitting nearby, sweating. My plan was already taking effect. "What are you doing here?" Joseph noticed me and raised his voice. I slowly took off my sunglasses. "Dad, brother, I arranged all the cancellations." My voice was calmer than expected. "Christina." My father looked stunned. "Shall I explain?" I continued calmly. "I am Christina Anderson, founder of Horizon Investment Technologies, and also a shareholder of this hotel." I could see the color drain from my father and Joseph's faces. They were no longer looking at the shadow me. Instead, I was Christina, the young entrepreneur, praised by the public, the me they had long underestimated. "Wait," Joseph cried desperately. "Tiffany's parents, my reputation." "Don't worry," I interrupted him. "I've already informed Tiffany's parents about all the lies you told them about being a big-time executive with vast wealth. It's basic manners to tell the truth, right?" My grandmother gently squeezed my hand, her warmth giving me courage. "Now, if you'll excuse me," I said coolly. "I plan to spend a wonderful week here in the penthouse suite with my grandmother. Of course, it's all on my own expense." As I headed to the elevator, I could sense my father and Joseph standing dazed behind me. "Christina." My grandmother looked up at me inside the elevator. "You've really become strong." "Yes," I smiled. "But it's all thanks to Mom and you, Grandma." The sunset over Waikiki glowed brightly through the penthouse windows. I sighed deeply. This wasn't the end. It was a new beginning. Just then, my smartphone vibrated. It was a message from my secretary, Mandy. "Ms. Anderson, as planned, Tiffany's parents have arrived at the neighboring hotel." I sighed deeply again. What was about to happen was not what I had wished for, but the truth inevitably comes to light. That night, a commotion erupted in the hotel bar. "Did you deceive my daughter?" Tiffany's father's angry voice echoed through the quiet bar. Joseph stood frozen, his face pale. My father remained rigid beside him. From a distance, I watched the scene unfold while sitting at the bar counter, quietly swirling my glass. An executive at a big company, with vast wealth. Tiffany's mother's voice trembled. "It was all lies." There's an explanation for this." "It's all my sister's fault." Joseph stammered. "Blaming your sister." Tiffany stood up, her eyes brimming with tears. "You were calculating and lying even before you met my parents, weren't you?" My father tried desperately to cover up. "Tiffany, my son indeed made some mistakes." "This is not a mistake." Tiffany's father interjected. "This is fraud." Joseph looked like he might collapse. Tiffany, I really... Enough. Tiffany interrupted him, removed her ring and placed it on the table. I'm calling off the engagement. Tiffany's parents left with stern expressions. We will send the official documents through our lawyer first thing tomorrow morning. I set down my glass and quietly left the bar. When I returned to the penthouse, my grandmother was looking at the moon by the window. Is it over? She asked gently. Yes, I replied, sitting beside her and taking her hand. No one else will get hurt now. The next morning, my father and Joseph left Hawaii early. My grandmother and I decided to stay and enjoy our planned one-week vacation. As we strolled on the Waikiki beach in her wheelchair, she shared memories of my mother's youth. Your mother must be watching this scenery too. I smiled. Immediately after returning home, I moved into a new house with my grandmother and Alex. The family home had too many steps and was inconvenient for my wheelchair-bound grandmother. It was the perfect timing, as a barrier-free house had just become available, and I had secretly been preparing for the move. My relationship with my father and Joseph was irreparably damaged. However, that marked the beginning of a new life for me. A few weeks after the events in Hawaii, a letter arrived at my office. It was from my father, including documents from Tiffany's parents' lawyer. Joseph was facing a claim for $50,000 in damages, $78,000 in cancellation fees for the wedding venue, $43,000 for refunds and related costs to guests, and an additional $50,000 in other damages. My father and Joseph must have been shocked by the amount. The next day, my father called. Christina, can we somehow discuss this? I refuse, I said coldly. This is the seed your son sowed. But such an amount, there's no way we can pay. Fraudulent actions have their consequences. I interrupted. His behavior is already the talk of the company. I hung up without waiting for his response. It appears your brother will be dismissed. My secretary Mandy informed me. Tiffany's parents had taken legal action, and Joseph was to be fired from his company. My father also had to leave his company. A father of a fraudster. Rumors had spread, and he found it too awkward to stay. They lost most of their savings, sold the family home, and moved to a cheap apartment in the suburbs. Joseph tried to find a new job, but to no avail. He ended up working part-time at a night bar. Given his history of not saving and spending frivolously, even maintaining a normal life would be challenging. My father, too, unable to find work again due to his age, and with savings running low, had lost all his former dignity. Occasionally, I heard rumors about them. I saw your father waiting for the supermarket's time sale. Your brother works late into the night at his part-time job. I listened indifferently. This was the retribution for their actions. Sometimes, my grandmother worried aloud. I wonder if those boys are all right. Grandma. I held her hand. There are consequences to one's choices. My father and Joseph would struggle for many years to come. The financial penalties were a fitting punishment for their arrogance. I turned my attention to the documents for a new project. There was no longer any need to think about them. I just needed to keep moving forward, following the lesson my mother left me. Behind every number, there's always a person's life. Exactly, Mom. Numbers can sometimes be the most effective avengers.